In the summer of 2019, Clara Hayes, whose name has been changed, a single young woman, decided to take a long trip to visit her grandmother Eleanor, whose name has been changed, in the remote countryside of Kentucky. Her grandmother's house was deep in the countryside, miles away from the nearest town, surrounded by fields and forests. The house was old, having been there for a very long time, possessing an antique charm but also a certain melancholy of age. Clara loved her grandmother and the childhood memories at this house. However, she also felt a strange quietness and sometimes a slight eeriness of the remote countryside at night. Behind her grandmother's house was a large garden, and at the end of the garden, hidden among overgrown bushes and weeds, was an old well. The well had been abandoned for a very long time, its mouth covered by an old wooden board, covered in moss. It looked old and slightly frightening, like a dark mouth swallowing the shadows. When Clara arrived, Grandmother Eleanor was very happy. She took Clara on a tour of the house, the garden, and told old stories. When passing by the abandoned well, Grandmother Eleanor just said it had been unused for a long time and she had covered the mouth for safety. She didn't say anything more about the well. The first day at her grandmother's house passed peacefully. Clara helped her grandmother in the garden, talked, and enjoyed the fresh air of the countryside. As night fell, the old house became quiet. The sound of wind blowing through the gaps in the doors, the creaking of the old wooden floors, and the chirping of insects from outside created a symphony of the countryside night. Grandmother Eleanor went to bed early. Clara stayed in the living room alone, reading. The room was only lit by a small table lamp. While reading, Clara suddenly heard a faint sound coming from the back of the house, from the direction of the garden. At first, she thought it was just the sound of the wind or some animal. But the sound wasn't like an animal sound. It was singing, a faint, melodious voice, like a lullaby. Clara stopped reading, listening. The singing was very soft, but clear, as if coming from somewhere not far from the house. She felt a strange unease. Who would be singing in the garden at this hour, in the dark? She tried to dismiss the thought, thinking it was perhaps music from a neighbor's house echoing, although the nearest neighbor was quite far away. However, the singing didn't sound like music from a radio. It was a live voice, and it had a strange timbre, both melodious, sad, and a little bit eerie. The singing seemed to be coming from the direction of the end of the garden, from the direction of the abandoned well. Clara felt shivers. Was someone near the abandoned well and singing? She lay on the sofa, listening to the singing in the dark, the melody from the darkness, from the abandoned well behind the house, made her feel uneasy and curious. This was just the beginning of something much more terrifying. The abandoned well began to sing at night, carrying secrets from the past. The singing from the abandoned well behind her grandmother's house echoed regularly every night, always around midnight or a little later. It wasn't a cheerful song, but a sad, melodious tune, sounding like an ancient lullaby. Clara couldn't sleep soundly. Every night, she would wake up to that singing. She tried to ignore it, but the sound seemed to penetrate her mind, sowing unease. The voice was very distinct. It was a woman's voice, young, but carrying a deep sadness. Its timbre was clear but also had something eerie, like an echo from a great distance, or from deep below. Clara began to feel scared about the abandoned well. During the day, it looked normal, old, abandoned, but at night, it became the source of the strange singing. She asked her grandmother about the well. "Grandma, is there something about that old well?" Clara asked her grandmother gently. Grandmother Eleanor looked at Clara. Her expression slightly changed, but she only said, "Oh, that well is very old. Dear, I covered the mouth for safety. It's no longer in use." Grandmother Eleanor seemed reluctant to talk much about the well. She quickly changed the subject. Her grandmother's avoidance only made Clara more curious and uneasy. It seemed grandmother knew something about the well, but she didn't want to say. The following nights, the singing from the abandoned well echoed again. This time, Clara felt as if the singing was a bit louder than the previous nights. As if the singer was getting closer, or singing louder. She lay in bed, listening to the singing in the dark. That sad melody made her feel a strange loneliness and coldness. It wasn't just a sound, it also carried an emotion. A deep sadness, a certain despair. Clara felt as if the singer was trying to say something through the song. One night, when the singing echoed, Clara couldn't stand it anymore. Fear and curiosity drove her. She quietly got out of bed, went to the bedroom window overlooking the backyard. She looked out. The garden was shrouded in darkness. The abandoned well was a blurry black shape at the end of the garden. The singing was still coming from that direction. Clara stared intently at the abandoned well, feeling as if someone was standing there, or inside the well, and singing. She felt a sudden cold draft radiating from the end of the garden. Where the well was located, the cold was very different, very deep, as if it penetrated her bones. It wasn't the normal cold of the night. Clara shivered. She knew something was wrong with the abandoned well. Something supernatural was residing there. The singing from the deep well was a terrifying reminder of things hidden in the darkness. That sad melody didn't just bother Clara's sleep. It was calling her. The singing from the abandoned well didn't stop after a few nights. It continued to echo every night, regularly, making Clara's fear grow stronger. That sad, eerie melody haunted her throughout the day. Clara didn't dare to talk much about the singing with her grandmother anymore, because every time she mentioned it, her grandmother would avoid the topic or quickly change the subject. Clara felt as if her grandmother knew something, but she didn't want her granddaughter to know. During the day, Clara tried to find out about the abandoned well. She walked to the end of the garden, approaching the well. In the daylight, it was just an old, abandoned well, its mouth covered by a rotting wooden board. She looked at the well's mouth, trying to see through the wooden boards. She couldn't see anything, only the deep darkness below. The air around the well was slightly colder than other areas in the garden, but not significantly. However, standing near the well, Clara sensed a presence there. A heavy, gloomy feeling, as if that place had witnessed something terrible. Sometimes, during the day, when walking through the garden, Clara would suddenly hear very faint sounds coming from the direction of the abandoned well. Sounds like splashing water, or something moving deep below. Those sounds startled her, but when she went closer to check, everything would be silent. The obsession with the singing and the well grew stronger. Clara began to feel as if she was being watched. Even during the day, she always had the feeling that someone was looking at her from the end of the garden, from the direction of the abandoned well. The following nights, the singing from the abandoned well was not only clearer, it also seemed closer. Clara felt as if the singer was no longer deep inside the well, but standing right at the mouth of the well, or even on the ground, near the well. One night, the singing echoed. Clara sat up in bed, listening. That melodious, sad singing sounded so clear as if the singer was standing right outside her bedroom window. She held her breath, listening. That singing wasn't just a sound, it also carried an emotion. Of pain, a certain despair. She felt as if the singer was trying to convey some kind of message through the song. She crept quietly to the window. Looking out, the garden was shrouded in darkness. She saw the abandoned well. And right next to the well, she suddenly saw something. A blurry white shape, a hazy figure, like mist, hovering slightly above the ground. The figure looked like a woman. Clara gasped in horror and backed away from the window. She had seen the singer. It was a ghost. The entity from below, from the abandoned well, had revealed itself. Fear consumed Clara. She knew that her grandmother's house wasn't just haunted. That abandoned well was a gateway to something evil. The singing was getting clearer. And the ghost had appeared. The haunting was escalating, and Clara didn't know if she could escape this house safely. The appearance of the blurry white shape beside the abandoned well confirmed Clara's worst fears. The singing she heard was from a spirit, a ghost. The obsession with the singing and the ghost grew stronger. Clara slept very little, and every time she closed her eyes, she saw the image of the white shape hovering beside the abandoned well. She knew she had to find out about the abandoned well. There was a secret hidden there. A secret related to the spirit haunting it. Clara tried to ask Grandmother Eleanor more directly about the well, about its history, about whether anyone had had any incidents there. Grandmother Eleanor seemed very worried when Clara asked about the well. She said she didn't know much about it, that it was very old and no one used it anymore. However, Clara sensed the tension in her voice. She was hiding something. Clara secretly searched in the old house, hoping to find any clues about the history of the well or the garden. She found old photos, old letters, and a few old diaries. In an old diary belonging to her great-grandmother, name changed, Clara found terrifying notes about the abandoned well. The diary recorded the story of a tragic incident that happened at this ranch many years ago. In the early 20th century, a young girl who lived here was said to have contracted a serious illness and died a painful death. Her body was said to have been thrown down the abandoned well. Because at that time, her illness was considered terrifying and they wanted to get rid of it. It is said that the spirit of that young girl was still trapped in the well. Full of pain and anger, Clara shivered reading these lines. The tragic story matched horrifyingly with what she was experiencing. Young girl died a painful death. Thrown down the abandoned well. Trapped spirit. Sad singing. Blurry white shape. Perhaps the spirit she saw was the spirit of that young girl. She was singing a lullaby. A song she perhaps sang to herself in her final hours. And the abandoned well wasn't just an old well. It was her grave, and where her spirit was confined. The secret of the abandoned well was revealed. It was a tragic story of the death and confinement of an unfortunate spirit. Clara understood why that spirit haunted the well and sang every night. Perhaps she wanted to be freed. Or perhaps She was trying to tell her story, seeking justice. However, this truth was even more terrifying than the singing and the ghost. It was a story of inhumanity in the past, of a spirit abandoned and forgotten. Clara's fear didn't decrease, but instead, there was a sense of sadness and pity for the unfortunate spirit. But she also knew that the spirit could be dangerous. Trapped and suffering for many years, it could become evil. The secret of the abandoned well had been opened, bringing horrifying things from the past. After learning the secret of the abandoned well and the tragic story of the young girl thrown down it, Clara's fear of the singing and the ghost did not diminish. Instead, it increased, because she understood that the spirit was suffering and could turn evil. The singing from the abandoned well still echoed every night. But now, to Clara's ears, it was not just a sad melody. It sounded like a cry for help, a plea, or an accusation of injustice. Clara felt an urge to help the unfortunate spirit. She knew she couldn't leave her trapped in that well forever. She tried to find out about how to free a trapped spirit, about rituals or methods that could help a spirit find peace. However, this information was often vague and uncertain. One night, when the singing echoed from the abandoned well, Clara decided to go outside. To get closer to the well, she carried a flashlight and a sense of determination mixed with fear. She quietly left the house. Walking through the dark garden, the flashlight beam illuminated the path to the end of the garden. As she approached the abandoned well, the singing was clearer than ever. It sounded as if it was coming from the mouth of the well itself. Clara shone the flashlight into the well. The light illuminated the mouth of the well covered by the old wooden board. She stood there, staring into the well, listening to the singing. The melody was very familiar. But this time, there were words being sung. The words were very faint, very difficult to hear, but Clara felt as if she understood them. They were words about sadness, about loneliness, about being abandoned, and about the coldness. She felt as if the spirit was trying to tell her about what she had gone through in her final moments. Then, the singing suddenly stopped. It was replaced by whispering. The whispering came from the mouth of the well. So cold. Clara froze in terror. The spirit was talking to her. "Help me." The whispering was very weak, very sad. Clara felt a deep sense of pity. She wanted to help, but she didn't know how. I don't know what to do," Clara said softly, her voice trembling. Silence fell over the well. The whispering was gone. Then, a sudden sound came from deep inside the well. The sound of water splashing violently, as if something had just fallen down. And after that, a scream. The scream wasn't singing. It was a scream full of pain, full of anger. The scream echoed from deep inside the well, reverberating throughout the garden, throughout the house. Clara backed away from the well, trembling all over. That spirit wasn't just sad. She was also angry. And that scream was a warning. The abandoned well wasn't just where the spirit was trapped. It was a gateway to something much more evil. Something that might have trapped the spirit in the first place. The cry for help from below had turned into a scream full of anger. And Clara knew she had stirred up something dangerous. After the horrifying night hearing the angry scream from the abandoned well, Clara knew she had made a serious mistake in trying to contact that spirit. The fear of the unfortunate spirit had turned into fear of an evil entity. Clara decided to leave her grandmother's house immediately. She didn't want to stay there for another second. She quickly packed her belongings the next morning. Grandmother Eleanor noticed Clara's haste and anxiety. But Clara just said she had urgent work to return to. Before leaving, Clara looked towards the end of the garden, where the abandoned well was. In the daylight, it looked normal and old. But Clara knew that the darkness hidden beneath was real. She got in the car and drove away, not daring to look back. She felt as if someone was watching her from the direction of the house or the garden. Clara escaped her grandmother's house and the abandoned well. But the haunting did not. The sad, eerie singing still echoed in her mind. That angry scream still haunted her dreams. She knew that the unfortunate spirit was still trapped in the well. Or perhaps, it had been completely overpowered by some evil force. She researched more about ghost stories related to wells and water. Many legends say that wells can be gateways to the other side, where trapped spirits or evil creatures reside. Perhaps, the abandoned well at her grandmother's house was one of those gateways. Clara never dared to return to her grandmother's house again. Even when grandmother Eleanor called and asked how she was doing, she couldn't face that place. With the horrifying secrets she had discovered, grandmother Eleanor eventually passed away a few years later. And the house, along with the garden and the abandoned well, stood there, isolated and forgotten. It is said that on quiet late nights, nearby residents sometimes still hear a melodious, sad singing coming from the direction of the garden of the old house. The singing from the abandoned well still echoes, like a pursuing curse, a reminder of the tragedy in the past and of the spirit trapped below. Clara knows that singing will never stop. It is a part of that place, of its dark past. The fear and the haunting memory of the abandoned well and the spirit of the young girl thrown down it will forever follow Clara. She had seen something beyond comprehension, and that had changed her life forever. The grave well still sings, and the curse remains. If you enjoyed these true horror stories, or stories based on accounts and unexplained mysteries, like this, don't forget to hit the subscribe button on the channel to follow our latest videos. We will bring you more terrifying and haunting stories. Thank you for listening.